seem to be recording. I haven't used this much, but...
Shall I start?
Can do.
Right. The Apostle Paul used to go round and visit the churches, the towns and cities where God had used him aforetime. And he used to recount the wonderful things that had happened to inspire the faith of the people. And so I want to set on records over the next weeks or so incidents that come to mind that have been long forgotten, because 60 years of ministry, you've a lot to share. I'm going to talk to you about a family that lived up in Lancashire, which covered quite an area. I remember very distinctly being invited to go to Barrow in Furness in Lancashire. Now, Barrow in Furness was a shipbuilding place of some renown. They built submarines there during the war. And I met this family and stayed with them, and they were called the Etheringtons. But even the journey there to Barrow in Furness is long remembered, because it is 30 miles from the M6, the motorway, to go up to Barrow in Furness. And it was a very windy journey. But I remember distinctly one particular village, and that village was tainted blue. Yes, it was. The houses and the shops were all tainted blue. And I used to think, I wonder why that is so. And it was because Reckitt's blue was manufactured there. Now, Reckitt's blue was something that the women folk used to put in their wash, especially their whites, to make them whiter than white.
I can remember, yeah.
And you could buy a little
blue tab
container, this like a cloth container,
yeah,
with a peg on it, and you dip it in to the washing. And the washing, you'd think would come out blue, but it came out brilliant white. That's one of those natural miracles. And I called it the Reckitt Blue Village. I can't even remember its name. But there were villages I went there and preached, like at Millbrook, where I used to have lunch and dinners with local people, and they got saved and came to Christ and got healed by the power of God. But my special place was Barrow in Furness, and I stayed with Hetheringtons. They were a lovely couple, getting on in years, but they were real genuine Christians. And Mr. Hetherington, I can't remember his Christian name, wanted to open a fellowship. And I went to preached in Barrow in Furness, and people came to the Lord. I remember there was one young fellow got saved, and he was a bit odd. And everybody in Barrow in Furness thought that he was a little bit crazy. But you know, when he got saved, he made a beautiful Christian. And I'm sure God healed him of this weakness that he had. He used to write to me for weeks afterwards, and then he went to be with the Lord. He was only a young man, but God wanted him in heaven for some reason. Anyway, a tragedy befell this family, but I'll tell you about that later on. Now, part of this was that I got an invitation to go to Lyndon Lee. Now, Lyndon Lee is a small village that lies between Morecambe, the turn-off for Morecambe, and the turn-off for Barrow in Furness. It's all on the A6, as it is. And you turned off a little narrow lane. It took you through a few houses, up the side of a hill, and then over a small bridge. There was a canal up there, and then eventually you landed on a Roman road. And you could tell it was a Roman road because it was so straight, even on the side of a hill. And the Romans used to build roads like that. They used to be raised up so that they could have a commanding view of the valleys and the places all around. Anyway, I stayed there with a family, and they were called the Packham family. Now, Larry was in charge of this family. He was the head man of the family, and Hilda was his wife's name, and she was a very godly woman. One of the most godly women I've ever met in my life. And you could just feel something about the house and about her as a person that was a touch of heaven somehow. And she had children too, and I got to know all the children and watched them grow up over a period of about maybe 20 years, I would say. Anyway, Larry had a haulage company and a fleet of lorries, probably about 5 or 6 lorries. And they worked on the building of the M6 motorway. And Larry used to say to me, Peter says, come, let's go and see, come and see how they're getting on with the motorway. So I used to jump in the lorry, and he'd take me right down to the front where the hardcore was being laid, and I'd talk to the men. And I used to witness to them. I had some wonderful chances to talk to them about the Lord. Anyway, in the course of my going there, Larry said to me one day, I'd like you to have a meeting here in my house. And the house was called after the village, Lyndon Lee. And it was quite a spacious property. In fact, in the later years, I took my big gospel tent and put it in there. And I could tell you many stories that happened. It's all coming back to me now in Lyndon Lee. I'll tell you one, I better tell you now, I might forget. I remember one morning, I got up early, went into the tent, and I was praying. And I came out to go for my breakfast. And when I came out of the tent, there was a little lad coming up with a few milk bottles. He was helping the milkman deliver milk. And there was a banner across the entrance, and this little lad said to me, he said, are you the preacher? And I said, yes. How did you guess? He said, I don't know. He said, I just felt that you were the preacher. So he said, but he said, I don't like that banner. I said, well, what's wrong with the banner? He says, it's got swear words on it. So I said, swear words on the banner? Aye. I said, what swear words? He says, can I speak it? So I said, of course you can. He says, Jesus, it says on it. So I said, why is Jesus a swear word? He says, because my dad, when he gets angry, he swears at me and says Jesus. It's I felt like laughing. Well, I did have a little chuckle myself. So I said, look, I said, I know you're a busy lad, but I said, I want you to come and see me one evening while I'm here. And I come early when you come from school. Well, he says, I'll come and talk to you. And this little lad came to talk to me, and I explained to him who Jesus was and things like that. I said, it's not a swear word. It's because Satan hates the name of Jesus and wants men with foul language to use it. I said, and that's why your dad uses it. So we need to pray for him to come and get saved and belong to Jesus, and he'll know who he's talking about then. Anyway, we had these crusades in the tent at Packham's. But the first one we ever held was in the barn. And Larry said to me, he said, I've invited a few friends along. He said, and the service will be in the barn. I'll show you, he said. So he took me to this barn, which was not far from the house. And he said, I'm going to put bales of hay down to sit on. I haven't got any chairs, not many anyway. And so he put these bales of hay down for us to sit on. Well, when folk came in, of course, and squatted down, and there'd be about 40 folk came, his pals and his friends, and folk from the neighbouring villages, and among them was Annie and Stephen Towler, and they were farmers as well. But I remember that night as long as I live, because when they came in and sat down, we all started sneezing from the bales of hay, you see. And I started sneezing and all. And it took us quite some time to settle down to singing and so on. Because when we started to sing, we started to sneeze. But that all settled down when we realised what the problem was. And I preached the gospel. And Annie was the first. She came on her own that first meeting. Now she was a chiropodist. And she went around the villages looking after the elderly people for their feet and making sure they were all right. And Larry said to me, he said, you know, I'd like Annie to get saved. He said, because she could go and talk to all the elderly folk that she was visiting for as a chiropodist. And I thought that was a bright idea. So, but he said, she's got a problem. So I said, what's the problem? He said, well, because of her work, her back is very bad, and she now has to wear a back support. So you'll have to keep that in mind when you talk to her. You know, be very wise. She might start saying, well, I got backache then, if you believe in God and all that. But Annie got saved, and she joined the Methodist Church eventually. And I remember one particular night, she said to me, I'd like you to pray for my back. She said, I believe what you've been teaching, God can heal me. And I prayed for Annie Tower, and God miraculously healed her. She was such faith by then that after I'd prayed for her, she went home and took this support off and never wore it again. Wow. And she was wonderfully healed. And you know, she used to come to the meetings and bring that support, and she'd bend down and touch her toes and jump up and down and show the people how God had healed her. Well, for those villagers, it was an amazing story. And they talked about it. And you know, they talked, and especially in the Methodist Church, a story was outstanding. And I must tell you what comes to my mind. And I remember her saying to me, there's a local preacher, and he's full of arthritis, and he can't now get into the pulpit because he can't walk up into the pulpit. And he's found he can't go preaching anymore. She said that he wants to see you. And not only that, he's going blind as well. So I went to see him. Now I can't remember his name, but I thought about it the other day, and I think it could have been a Mr. Hill, H-I-L-L. And I went to see him and prayed for him, and God healed him. The arthritis went, and his sight came back.